Coming up in today's episode.
But isn't that a bit like Michael Jackson dangling his kid over a balcony?
I can't remember the names of things in general. My name, for one.
Only people in Yorkshire say that, though. Panchan, where do you recommend we go? Because you're just meowing all the way through this podcast. Where should they go? Oh, I agree. All right, everyone, and welcome back to the That Makes Sensei Podcast. Anyway, Stu, what's the theme for today's episode? What are we talking about today?
Where's the most beautiful place you have been to? Apart from every time you open up FaceTime to me, of course.
Ah, well, you know, there's only so many times you can go to heaven in one life, isn't there? So.
Well, not in this scenario.
Oh, the good thing is, if you listen to this podcast, you're going to get a healthy dose of sarcasm every single episode.
Yeah.
So, recently, I went to the north part of Shiga. Like, Shiga is basically 90% water. There's just a massive lake and people live around it. But
Shiga, by the way, do you want to explain where
sorry,
it is?
Shiga is like in the middle of Japan, kind of near Kyoto. If you look on Google Maps, you'll see it. There's not much here. It's quite countryside. However, the north is like a lot of mountains. If you go up into the mountains and you look over the lake, it's a splendid view of the world to have. And I went there and the sun was just setting and it was probably the best sunset I've ever seen. I was legit a little moved by how beautiful it were. And I'm the kind of person where I'm like, oh yeah, you know, people are too dramatic. Like, oh, a double rainbow. I'm not going to cry. I'm just going to be like...
Dramatic?
Yeah.
If I were there in that scenario and I had my kids, I'd be like...
Lion King.
Anyone who doesn't know, it's Lion King, Simba going up. That's drama for you.
But isn't that a bit like Michael Jackson dangling his kid over a balcony? Like, there's a line somewhere
maybe,
here, mate.
I have to think about that one. Maybe he was watching that when he did that.
Yeah, maybe he's watching Lion King on VHS in his hotel
All those
room.
animals were loving... I can't remember his name. Mufasa.
Yeah.
All the other animals were loving it. Maybe people will do that too. And then...
And next minute he's on papers and child protection services.
God, it sends shivers up my spine thinking about it. And I'm not just putting that in for the vocab. It seriously does. Like, if you watch on YouTube, you see I did a cold shiver before.
And I saw it and I thought it was weird, but there you go. But yeah, top of the mountains near Lake, the north side of Lake Biwa, looking over the lake, sunset. Beautiful. How about you, Stu?
For me, it kind of makes me think that I wish I spent more time really taking in England to its full potential. I lived on the edge of Dartmoor, which is like a national park in England, and you're in Yorkshire, so you are near a lot of natural. Yeah, so but I wish I did more. I did a lot on Dartmoor, but I wish I went to like Peak District or something. But anyway, Dartmoor would be one. Dartmoor is a really fantastic place if you're in England. It's so picturesque and so beautiful that I really, really recommend people to visit there. I really, really do. Not just because I lived there for half my life, but because it's just, quiet in a time where it's so busy all the time, and I appreciated it more just before I left. I think I grew up there, so when you're a kid, you want to be around stuff, don't you? But
you kind of take it for granted.
As I grew up, I understood. You
definitely. Just kind of have that thing in your head where you're like, this is so normal for me, so I don't care about it. But then when you're not there, you're like, oh, actually, that was pretty special. So I feel the
100%.
same. So Dartmoor, I've never actually been to Dartmoor myself. Isn't it famous for a prison?
Yeah, there's a prison there, Dartmoor Prison.
Nobody goes there for
tours. It's quite quiet. It's really like lots of small villages in Dartmoor, so it's great. I really, really enjoy it. And I think that the best part about it for me is just there's so many rolling hills. And also it's one of those places where it has tors. Do you know what a tor is?
Like T-O-R, tor.
T-O-R. I don't know what the spelling is actually. It might be T-O-R-R-E.
Okay.
T-O-R, maybe just T-O-R. But it's basically like there's a location, a landmark, if you will, where there's many of them anyway, many landmarks on Dartmoor where there's just like stones positioned on top of each other to make like a really epic position always on the top of a hill as well. I never really got what the history was. It's like so bare that there's not like a guy there with some some kind of tourist map or something. There's nothing there, so it's really hard to find out the information about these places. But yeah, I always thought they were amazing structures.
That's kind of cool because
Yeah.
somebody's had to have lugged them stones up there at some point. For what purpose, I don't know, but there you go. Yeah, I mean, like, rural Britain is one of those things that's actually really, really good, but I just took it for granted growing up. Like, I didn't really think about it. It's like, oh, great, it's some fields, it's some hills, whatever. Because I was younger and I wanted to go live in the cities or whatever and, live out a bit more like what you saw on TV, like crazy life, lights and bustling crowds and whatnot. But, yeah, like Yorkshire as well. Sheffield, in the city. Sheffield, where I grew up, is very industrial. Lots of factories, lots of old buildings. It's a bit grim, for want of a better term. But you drive 20 minutes outside Sheffield towards like the Dales and stuff. It is proper beautiful, and it don't get the credit it deserves. So that's probably somewhere I'd visit. Like the biggest problem for me is that people, when they visit England, they go London, maybe like Cotswolds or something. And then up to Edinburgh and off they go.
Manchester.
And maybe Manchester on the way. But there's a lot more to see than them cities. I mean, they're beautiful, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot more outside. And the same thing is true in Japan. Like, where do people visit in Japan? They go Tokyo, and then they go to Kyoto, maybe Hiroshima if they fancy it, and then back to Tokyo and then go home. Like,
when I was in university, the gap year was very popular, people going away for a year. But it just started at that period of time. So I think we were lucky, but also still at that period of time, you thought about traveling to Japan. I'll only do it once in my life if I can. It's a bucket list thing,
For most people.
I think that, I think we need to think about that. So when they come, they visit all the main places that they've seen in the brochures or whatever. But there are so many great places. In Narita itself has an amazing temple that is not clearly seen enough by enough people. It's so good, honestly, like one of the best temples in my opinion in Japan, because it's just nothing like, it's got a massive park, it's so quiet as soon as you get there. It's amazing.
I mean, Japanese tourism wise, like the temples and the shrines and the castles are the things that are so different to where we grew up, right? Like, we don't have anything like that in England.
The castles are completely
well, they actually have still fully built some of them, like the first, I'm a bit ignorant. Like, I feel like I've been to one shrine. I've kind of seen all of them. But now as I've been here longer, and I can kind of appreciate the differences between these shrines and what makes them special. But for me, Himeji Castle in Kansai, there's a city called Himeji, and it's got a very famous castle, and it's probably considered the best castle in the whole of Japan. And it's proper beautiful. It's really, really good, especially if you go there. There's a nice park in cherry blossom season with all the cherry blossoms are out. It is amazing.
I love it when it's
so
cherry blossom
good.
season. I mean, many people, I hear many people online, specifically foreigners who are visiting, who are doing like this is Japan, come visit these places, say that cherry blossom season isn't that good to them. But I think they only think about, like a chock-a-block location where everyone's having their drinking.
Hanami,
the name
they call
of
it. Which
Hanami,
is looking at flowers
right underneath the cherry blossoms in Ueno, for example,
like that's such a hot
where
spot.
It's really, really busy. It's a
like
hot spot.
Everybody goes there. But if you can find somewhere a little bit off the beaten track, where there's not going to be huge crowds of people, it's nice sitting in the park, having a little picnic, drinking a beer, looking at the cherry blossoms. Everybody's kind of like,
But that's the thing. There's locations where it's not busy. And I think that people forget that. Autumn's great as well. Don't get me wrong. The colours in autumn here are incredible. But I do think that cherry blossom season is not as underwhelming as people seem to think.
I think it's really good. I look forward to it every year. Just going and looking at it and just being like, it's really nice. But it's kind of funny because growing up, if somebody said, I like going to look at cherry blossoms, I'd be like, you sado, what are you doing? But now as I'm like an older bloke, I'm like, actually, this is mint. This is absolutely amazing. And I guess that's just how things change.
Difficult to understand, different times in our lives, isn't it?
Stuff that I appreciate now, I definitely wouldn't have appreciated if I came here as a teenager or 20-odd-year-old. But being old and somewhat more boring than I used to be, it's part of life, isn't it?
How about the cities?
I think in Japan, there's a part of it that's quite interesting. You know, kind of that Blade Runner-esque feeling where, you know, like it's futuristic, lots of neon lights, and it's very Japanese in a way. It's kind of its own aesthetic. But for the most part, I find Japanese cities generally a bit boring. They're quite copy and paste, and a lot of the buildings are grey, and it's just a bit... But then again, most cities are kind of that way. So maybe I'm being a bit unfair, but I find it... At first, it's super cool, and it's like, oh my god, look how interesting it is. But then eventually, after you've been here a while, it just gets a bit copy and paste. You've got the same 3 convenience stores and, you know, whatever.
I don't think there's a great deal of places. I mean, I would say that there are definitely districts of each city that are pretty contemporary, you know, and districts that are run down, just like in every place. But the thing that always catches me is the nighttime usually. When you're near a train station and there's just all of these lights and of course I've been here for 7+ years, I know about it, but it's like, it's still quite cool.
I think it's kind of like anything though, you just get desensitized to it. Like when you're first here, like, oh, the lights, the station, oh my god, it's so amazing. But then after 7 years, you're a bit like, oh, it's normal. But then sometimes you have that thing where you just kind of like, oh, actually, this is something that I experience every day, which is actually really special. I've just got used to it. 100%. Shut up, cat.
Okay, the cat's telling us this is the time that we need to wrap up. So I'd love to know, can you give someone one hidden gem?
One hidden gem in Japan or in England?
In Japan. Let's do one in Japan and one in England because people are obviously interested in British, so let's do both.
Go to Hiroshima. Hiroshima has the place where the atomic bomb was dropped. There's a park there, like the Peace Park. It's called Genbakudon, which is like the famous dome that's kind of... Everything's disintegrated, but the structure's still there, right? That park is one of the most weird places I've ever been because it's so beautiful, but it's so sad. And it's hard to really know how to feel when you're there. And I really enjoyed going there in a way that I didn't expect. It's really beautiful if you go at the right time of year, but it's also quite harrowing. And yeah, it's definitely somewhere I think you should visit. So if you're in Japan, I would recommend that. Stu, how about you in Japan? Where are you recommending?
Nikko. I love Nikko a lot.
Is it in Tochigi?
That's right, yeah. So it's not miles away from where I am, but it's not really a hidden gem. People know about it, but there's so much you can do in the area. It ranges from like I can't remember the names of things in general. My name for one, but the temple is amazing. The main temple, it's like everyone knows the monkeys see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. That's one of the places where you'll find carvings of it. I don't know if it originated there. I don't want to say that because I don't know the facts. But that's where you'll see that carved on on parts of the buildings around the temple. And then also there you can see like the monkeys in the onsen, monkeys onsen in the mountains, which is amazing, And another thing there, this really small thing, but there's a place where there's like a route you go along, and then there's a curry. We went to get a curry somewhere, like a Japanese curry in this one place, and then you come out the door, and then you can walk down to there's lots of lakes, and there's this one lake where there's like a island. Somewhere, or maybe not an island, I can't really remember it in the top of my head, but when you go down and you pick up a rock, it's like rock from a volcano. Holding a rock from a volcano is like, oh, yeah, I mean, you could say that about anywhere, maybe.
but that's recently come from a volcano.
You can tell, yeah. Or from something similar to that, yeah. So it's just amazing.
You don't really realise until you do it, like, oh, actually, it's kind of cool that I can say I did that. Well, that's good. So what about England then, mate? What are we recommending in England?
England, I would say, Dartmoor, I'm always going to say, unfortunately. Because
unfortunately?
because I haven't got anything new to say, that's why,
fair enough.
Unfortunately. But because it was just, it's where I grew up half my life, and it's got a close place in my heart, and it's just so tranquil.
Makes sense. Makes Sensei.
Do we have to do that? I feel very awkward if we have to do that every time.
Yeah, we're gonna fit it in. I'm gonna try and slide it in every now and then.
Oh no!
But you know,
if I have to try and then just look into the camera,
like,
Makes
wink,
Sensei.
Yeah. But it is what it is, mate. And yeah, like. Penchan, where do you recommend we go? Because you're just meowing all the way through this podcast. Where should they go? Oh, I agree. Yorkshire, of course. Yorkshire, where I'm from. York City is really nice. It's kind of old style city, castle walls and cobbled streets and stuff. It's kind of nice. It's worth a look. But you know, Yorkshire, innit? God's own country, as they say. Only people in Yorkshire say that, though.
People from Yorkshire say. Windsor's quite nice if you want to see something to do with royalty, and it's quite quiet in comparison to Buckingham Palace.
And they've got Legoland, so there you go.
And they have Legoland. So. That's why you need to go to England, is because of Legoland.
2 birds, 1 stone.
That's it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget that there's that little place you can go and find a transcript, and it's on Patreon, under That Makes Sensei Podcast Patreon's page. It's in the link below. He told me earlier. Did he tell you? Yes, he did.
It's a magical place. We're almost there. With lots of podcast stuff and cats that want to be on the show.
TMS Podcast. TMS Patreon.
And don't forget, you know, down there's the link to the vocabulary sheet.
Oh, God, no. Don't say it that way. It sounds like you're
down there.
Something else.
So, don't forget you can get the free vocabulary cheat sheet. People, I'm going to cut that out and they'll be like, why is he laughing?
Zip.
Don't forget the free vocabulary cheat sheet. You can get it using the link in the description, and leave a rating wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, friends. Thumbs up, friends.
Friend.
Right, we've rambled a lot. Let's wrap it up. Stu, I'm not going to steal your catchphrase this week. You got a bit mad about it last week, so take us home.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.